Yes guys, what's going on? So today we're going to be deep diving into one of the most crucial things in dance music, and that's compression. So whether you're creating house, techno, melodic house, whatever it may be, you'll be using compression in your tracks. So let's break down what compressors do and which ones you can use in your tracks. So without further ado, let's get into the video.
I will love you endlessly.
So just before we get into specific types of compressors, let's actually just talk about what compressors actually do. So in a really simple way, a compressor just basically controls the dynamic range of whether that be a synth, a vocal, or can be a whole track if you're using it for mastering or mixing, whatever you're using it for. So especially in dance music, if you're looking for something to hit really clean, then a compressor is something that ideally should be on either the track, as I say, or the master bus. So in dance music, where things need to stay clean but hit hard as well, compression is key for making sure that your mix doesn't go out of control. Okay, so when a signal gets too loud or the signal is too low, a compressor can bring up the volume, it can also bring down the volume, which basically just then ends up balancing out your audio. So in this instance, we've got drums, but it can also keep your synths punchy, it can keep your drums punchy, it can keep, vocals in check. If you have some loud bits in your vocals, it can bring them down. So to say again, I reiterate that in dance music, it's incredibly important because you have to have consistent energy. And if you don't have that, the track can end up sounding boring and it can end up getting quite monotonous. Okay, so in this instance, I'm just going to grab the glue compressor in Ableton, which is basically Ableton stock. Okay, so now we've grabbed a glue compressor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play it with it off, and then we're going to mess with the compressor a little bit and show how bouncy the drums can actually get with a compressor. Okay, so this is it without. Okay, so if we increase that attack time a little tiny bit to 3, bring the release all the way down, and bring the ratio all the way down, we'll end up with it sounding like this. Okay, so I want it to affect those peaks a little bit more. So if I bring it down to around -3.5, maybe to about 2, bring that makeup gain up, and bring the range down. Okay, so a really extreme case, if we bring that threshold all the way down, you can hear them drums bouncing, right? But obviously we don't want them to bounce too much because they'll end up getting lost in the mix. So it's all about trial and error with the threshold and the makeup gain to make sure that they still sound bouncy, but that they're not getting lost in your mix. That's crucial. Okay, so now let's talk about VCA compressors. So VCA compressors are primarily used on your drums, on your bass. And the reason for this is because they are known for having a fast attack and release time. Okay, so the time when you'd use the VCA compressors would be on a kick drum. So this is one of the instances where you would use a VCA compressor. So the reason why you'd use a VCA compressor on this is because you want to keep the transient of the kick drum, so the start bit, but you do want to compress just after that so that you can squash it into the mix so you can glue it together. So if we just bring up the SSL G-Bus compressor, which is an example of a VCA compressor, and if we have the attack on quite fast here, and we have the threshold wherever, as I said before, with threshold, it depends on how loud your drums are. So you need to decide on where your threshold sits. So if we listen to this without the G-Bus compressor, I'm going to listen to it with. And this is a really over the top version of it because I'm trying to show you what it sounds like. So if we was just bring this threshold up, you can hear it starting to compress, but that initial hit doesn't get affected. So if we bring this all the way down, you can still hear that obviously it's being lowered, but you can hear that the first initial transient of that kick is still there. And obviously this is really important with your kick drums. It's also very important with your bass lines as well. Help it to shine through the mix, but primarily I normally use it on my kick drums. Okay, so popular VCA compressors are the SSL G-Comp, the DBX 160, and the API 2500. All of these I'll link below. So your SSL G-Comp is the UAD. You can get a DBX 160, Waves do that, and you can get API 250, which is also UAD. Okay, so now moving on to Opto compressors. So opto compressors actually means that it's being controlled by an optical sensor. Now, that's something that you don't really need to know. That's just a technical way of why it's called an optical compressor. So basically it reacts slower to audio signal changes. So because of this, opto compressors are amazing for vocals and pads. Okay, so here's an example. So we've got a vocal here that sounds like this.
Falling back in line, but I don't wanna leave your love behind. Maybe I'm waiting.
Okay, so you get the point. That's the vocal. So a compressor you can use on vocals is a CL1B. Now, as we said before, the attack is slow. It doesn't, as I say, squash the living hell out of them, basically. So if we listen to it without,
Falling back in line, but I don't want.
and then with,
Falling back in line, but I don't wanna leave your love behind.
it just sounds so much tighter and so much nicer. Okay, and finally, we have Vari-mu compressors. So these compressors are a bit more vintage sounding, and you'd normally use them as like a bus compression, or you'd use them for mastering. So the reason for this is they add a lot more warmth and they add a lot more glue to your mix, which is super important in dance music because everything needs to sound connected. So the best way to think about a Vari-mu compressor is to basically think of it as being the final polish to the bus that you're working on, or the master channel. So two classic examples of these are the Fairchild 670 and Manley Vari-mu. Okay, so we've gone through the different types of compression. Now, you probably ask yourself, how do I apply them? Now, I've shown you how to apply them in some aspects, but here's a couple of tips to help you to understand where to apply them and how to apply them. So the first one is parallel compression. So this one is a must for making your drums hit hard without losing dynamics. Okay, so parallel compression. So in this instance, we're going to be grabbing the API 2500. What we're going to do is we're going to be sending our channeled drums into in this instance, a chain. We're going to over compress the drums, and we're going to basically dial it back until we find that it sits right and the drums will pump more. So if we go into Ableton, you press group, and you're going to press this little thing here. You're going to right click, you're going to go create chain. So what we'll have is the chain that's without the compression, which is dry, and then we'll also have the one that's got the compressor on it, which is the fully compressed chain. Now what we can do is we can dial this one back until we find a nice area where they both work well together. Okay, so I think it sits nice around there. That is basically what parallel compression is. You're basically having a dry signal coming through with also the compressed signal coming through. You're putting them together and lowering that compressed chain that's over compressed, so it ends up coming together and sounding really nice together, so it pumps. And that's basically parallel compression. Okay, so the second tip is sidechain compression. Now, sidechain compression has been made really easily by Nicky Romero because he's created a plugin called Kickstart, which we can use. And normally, sidechain compression is used between the kick and the bass, and it's to duck out the bass line so that the kick can shine through. Okay, so if we look at this example, so we've got a kick and we've got a bass line that I've just dragged in from Splice. So if we play these together without the kickstart on the bass line, it sounds like this. Okay, so it sounds really muddy at the minute, but if we apply this kickstart here, what we can do is that basically all kickstart does is it ducks out the volume when the kick drum comes in. So if you set it to quarter notes for when the kick comes in, all it'll do, if you listen to it by itself, it just ducks. It just ducks those notes when the kick comes in. So it gets the bass line out the way of the kick. So if we take a listen to it with the kick, without the kickstart, and we take a listen to it with the kickstart. And that sidechain compression is really gluing those two kick and bass together. There's no muddy frequencies, and it's making sure that kick really punches through. Okay, and that's it on compression. So hopefully this video has shown you where and how to apply compression and what type of compression needs to be applied in certain areas. But remember to use your ears, because compression is much of an art as what it is a technical tool. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe and comment. Tell me what you want me to do. Do you want me to do more of this compression stuff? Do you want me to do a full track breakdown? Whatever you want me to do, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.